Hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Good morning for you, I guess. I didn't realize that it was this early in the morning for you. I'm sorry. I could have moved it a little bit further back, but
Okay.
I'm back from work.
Yeah, it's really morning for me. It's here you can say it's 7 a.m. early
uh,
morning. Okay.
hey, almost
So,
almost exactly opposite here because it's 6 o'clock in the evening for
yeah.
my time.
Yes, yeah. So I shall start now.
Okay.
Okay. So, so you see the topic that I have raised, that uh, rapists or the ones who physically abuse the girls must be provided death penalty. That means they must be hanged. And I duly support it. First of all, I just want to mention here that one of the main social evils that has been in active, or one of the main social evils that has been going on since ages and ages in the world is the case of rape. So when the question arises, how can we prevent the cases from happening in our future generations? Then I think apart from all other capital punishments that is provided by the government, the first one or the first punishment that must be said by the government to be performed is the hang. The rapist must be hanged in the public. Because if someone says me a solution that the girl who has got raped must be married to the boy or must be married to the one who has done it, and if they ask me that that is a solution to abolish rape cases, I don't think that can be. Because whenever a boy or whenever anyone physically torture a girl or makes any relation which is not legal or tries to rape a girl, can you just imagine that that boy would accept the girl as his wife? That is that is something foolishness if a society tries to do that. And apart from providing death penalty, I think at present there exists no such alternative. Because in a society, they have been getting so much of parity. I don't understand that why people do not come up to protest against it. Everywhere you find in newspapers, you will see that today this case has happened, today that has happened. But what is the step that society must take to prevent it? We have no answer to that. Back to you.
Okay. So first of all, I would absolutely agree with you that one of the largest societal evils that we face is that of rape. I absolutely agree in that we should do everything that can be done to try to prevent rape from happening. I do disagree with you, though, that the first punishment should be to focus on hanging. I don't think that's the first punishment at all. So let me respond to your arguments that you had there. The first thing you talked about was how in India, I believe it is, there's a rules. I'm not sure if it's cultural or if it's government that says that if a girl has been raped, she must marry her rapist, which is just disgusting. And I agree with you. That's just horrible. But my answer to you on that would be the solution to that doesn't mean, therefore, we need to kill the rapist. The solution there would be, therefore, we need to get rid of that idiotic law. So I think that both of us would agree that that's just an absolutely terrible, disgusting law. But I think that the solution there is not the one that you're advocating. The solution would be get rid of that law. The next thing you said that was that the death penalty would have to be done if there is no other alternative. However, I do think that there are at least two other alternatives that I would certainly propose that society can do to provide justice for the victims of that tragic occurrence. The first one that I would suggest would be that of imprisonment. And if the potential offender is dangerous enough, potentially life imprisonment. You can keep someone in prison for the duration of their life, thus removing them from being a public threat, which would be just as equally effective as killing that person in the first place. The second alternative that we could offer here would be that of chemical castration. Now, chemical castration is where the offender takes drugs which limit their sex drive. So they no longer have the same amount of desires that could have manifested themselves in these violent activities that they were trying to go through. And it's been shown when chemical castration has been administered in Europe and then in California, where it's also been tried, California state in the United States, which that's where I live. It's been shown to reduce the recidivism rates, or the rates at which the rapist will reoffend, by 95%. So it's significantly beneficial at making them productive, safe members of society. So both of those are alternatives that society can turn to, as opposed to the death penalty. Now, there are three reasons why I would prefer these to the death penalty. The first reason that I would prefer it would be that of decreased reporting. And what I mean by this is, if the punishment for rape is the death penalty, well, the victim knows that by coming forward, they're going to get their attacker killed. And the problem with that is that the majority of rape doesn't happen from some creepy guy jumping out of the woods. It doesn't actually work that way. The majority of rape happens from people who you know, someone who you trust, someone who even after the offense you still care about, oftentimes a family member, usually a boyfriend. And while it's a horrible thing and should be punished, the victim doesn't want the person who they still have some feelings for to be killed. So if we switch this penalty to the death penalty, that will decrease the amount of times when the victims would be willing, which would in turn cause more rape. And I think that's very dangerous. The second reason that I think it would be dangerous would be that of increased violence. If the punishment for rape is the death penalty, well, now you have the punishment for murder, which is the death penalty, and the punishment for rape, which is the death penalty. They're the same thing. But if a rapist is raping someone, if they let that person live, that person can turn them in. But if they kill that person, well, the penalty is the same. So if you make the penalty for rape be the death penalty, you incentivize the rapist to kill their victims. That is incredibly dangerous and certainly not a logical alternative here. And the third problem that I have with it is that it's going to lead to innocents being killed. There are a lot of people who, in any criminal justice system, even in the United States, where we have a very good criminal justice system, but I would assume it's just as well in India, there are innocent people who are convicted of crimes that they didn't actually commit. And if the death penalty is the punishment, you're sending innocent people to prison, or to their death. And it would be much better to simply go with life imprisonment or with reversible chemical castration.
Okay. You see, first thing I just want to say here, that whatever you say, that if death penalty is also for the murderers, if death penalty is also for the rapists, then probably there would exist no difference. And the thing is that I consider death penalty to the rapist and death penalty to the murders must be given, because the one who murders and the one who rapes, they both are equivalent. I consider in that way. Because, you see, whenever a girl gets physically tortured or physically abused, the society tries to get escape from the girl. The girl gets totally isolated in society. The society doesn't like to pay respect. So in that case, the girl is considered to be killed. She's considered to be dead. Even though she's alive, no one considers about her. So it is equivalent to that. So we can't justify saying that the girl is alive. No, the girl is dead. So when the question arises whether a crime has been made or not, I said there are two crimes performed. And first of all, the girl was physically tortured. She was being raped. And the second thing is that though she is not murdered, but yet it is equivalent and more dangerous to them. The second point, you talk about lifetime imprisonment. Fine. But it is sometimes when I know, or whenever I go through the Google search and all, I see some of the jails or some of the prisons where I don't understand the prisoners, they used to enjoy their livelihood over there. Actually, I don't consider the prisons to be one of that particular sources where someone can improve their mentality, someone can improve their character. It is really an invalid statement. Because in prisons, they will always get a company of someone who has been involved in crime. So when they get someone who is involved in crime, they will never go for a good mentality thinking. Every time bad thinking, bad mentality, and bad thoughts will come over there. So there is just no question of being, getting into good character of all the series. of all of it. There exists no possibility of that. And the third thing you mentioned about providing drugs or some chemical processes, yes, that can be made. That can be made. But what about what has already happened? That particular criminal had already raped a girl. He had destroyed the life of a girl. But if after that we provide him some, or we do some chemical, some chemical processes, if we reduce all his desires to do all these things, then what is going to happen? Probably he will not go for such activities in the future. But what is the punishment that we have provided to what he has done before? We have not provided any punishment. So when I talk about providing death penalty to rapists, I'm saying in the sense that because the crime of rape and the crime of murder both are the same thing. Because when a girl gets raped, the society tries to escape from her. She gets isolated. She gets isolated in such a way, and even sometimes neglected. So when say something neglected, it is equivalent to that. Back to you.
So I think that there's a little bit of a cultural difference in how each of our societies view rape. In America, I don't think that there is proposed to be any punishment to the woman after an instance of rape, which is a significant difference in how our cultures approach this issue, and that in some other cultures they will put some blame on the woman for having been raped, which I absolutely disagree with. There is nothing that is the woman's fault. There's not one thing. The woman can walk around naked, and it still is not her asking to be raped. It's still her body. There's no right of anyone else to go and put themselves on or in her body. That's simply not acceptable. There should not be any punishment whatsoever for the mother, for the woman. When it comes to the, you said that there was a girl who had been raped and tortured, and that would justify it. Well, I think that when we're talking about rape and murder, or rape and torture, or rape and kidnapping, or whatever, when you start stacking the different offenses, there needs to be a higher level of punishment for each of these things. For instance, a boy who date rapes his girlfriend has committed one offense, but someone who rapes and tortures, or who rapes, tortures, and kills has committed a greater offense. There would need to be a higher level of punishment. So if the death penalty is simply being instated after rape, well, you've made rape, torture, and kill be treated exactly the same as just regular rape. It's not a good solution. If the death penalty is to be enacted, it would have to be in extreme circumstances. There has to be some degree at which the punishment keeps getting greater and greater. You stated that there were some prisons where the prisoners are enjoying their lives. Well, first of all, they're still not free. They're still prevented from being able to live as they would please. There's nothing wrong with a prisoner having a decent life. We still want prisoners to have a good life. We want them to be punished for what they have done. And ideally, we want them to become more functional, better members of society in the future. We want them to repent of what they've done and become better persons. If you kill them, well, that's it. I think you're a Christian. At least I think you go to a Christian school that I saw. I'm not sure if you are or not, but whatever religion you might be, if you're killing someone, you are condemning them to hell. If that person is in the state of sin, they are going to hell. So you're condemning them to hell rather than giving them the chance to live a longer life in prison and eventually come to grips with what they've done and potentially convert, or whatever religion or whatever you might believe it is. And if you allow them that chance, they can become better people. They can better themselves. It doesn't matter if they ultimately have fun 10 years down the road. That's okay. But the point is, society can be protected from them. Society can still provide justice. And we got to come back to the thing that you didn't answer a couple of issues that I still had here, which was, if we make the death penalty be the punishment, that hurts women. It doesn't help them. It hurts them because it decreases the likelihood that women will come forward with rape accusations, and it increases the likelihood that rapists are going to kill their victims. because the punishment is the same if it's rape and murder versus if it's just rape. I think this is really dangerous and simply not something that we should go with.
Okay.
It would be much better to simply go with life imprisonment or chemical castration.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever you said, first thing I just want to say that you talk about innocent people. That there sometimes many people who are innocent but still get trapped in all these cases. So for that we have the judiciary, we have the judicial system where we require evidences, where we require proofs, where we have to go through long hearings and all. So I think in that case the justice will be provided to the ones who deserve, and in that case probably the innocent people will not be the victim. And the second point which you talked about, that if we provide death penalty, then there are more chances of the criminal killing their victims. Okay, fine. Now there is a very simple question over here, that there is whatever you talked about. You were taking a situation where rape cases will always occur in the generations and generations. You talk about a situation, or the way you have said to me in that way, I mean the way you have stated the statement, it seems that the rape cases will go on from generation to generation and will never end. But we want to stop these cases. We want to abolish it. And when we want to abolish it, this death penalty is important. Why? Because if today a criminal has been hanged in the public, tomorrow whenever one person or whenever other person will try to perform that particular type of crimes, he will think 100 of times. And probably out of these 100 thoughts, at least one time he will think that if I go on doing that case, or if I go on doing that, I'll be punished, and I'll be punished in a very severe way. So that will reduce the efficiency of rape cases in the society. Thing is that. But if we don't provide if we don't provide such punishment like that penalty, and just keep on going imprisonment, then there'll be like, it will be just an invalid punishment. Because still, after criminal gets released from the jail, after criminals get released on bail, again he will go on committing that particular type of crimes. So this is what is going on. And the question what you said, that providing death penalty to the rapist may also hurt the girl victim. But how? Whenever a girl has got raped, she has hurt her emotions. Whenever a girl has got raped, her emotions have been hurt. So when her emotions has been hurt, can you just imagine that the girl would agree or girl would disagree to the point that that must be the punishment provided to her criminal? It cannot happen. The girl will never disagree to this point that the person who has raped her should be given death penalty. That was. Back to you.
So obviously, I do wish to be very sensitive to the fact that someone who has gone through rape has experienced a horrible victimization, a horrible attack. And we do want to provide security for that person in the future, and a sense of justice as much as we possibly can. We can't restore what has already been taken away. It's impossible. But we can attempt to give back to that person for what they've suffered through. I absolutely agree with you on that. But that doesn't mean that the solution is kill. And I think that there's a much more multifaceted approach that has to be taken to this. Perhaps in some instances in which there's nothing else we can do, like if someone has shown a tendency to rape, murder, kill, then had another chance and they did it again, and they raped and murdered and killed again, and then they did it again, they raped and murdered and killed, and every time that we find that there's no way that society can protect itself from them, okay, maybe it might be a time to consider the death penalty. But if we just say the only way to provide justice is death penalty, and just anyone who has committed an instance of forced sex should be killed, well, there's no.
Okay.
Oh, you had something to say there? Go ahead.
Okay. No. Okay. You say, but you know what? Recently there was the upcoming video in YouTube. I have seen it in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arab, when a girl got raped, within a time limit of 5 minutes, the criminal was being killed in public. He was being shot. So over there, they respect women because Islam respects women in a very high sensitive way. So they never allow the women to be the victims of such social blunders. And if I talk about India, it is very, surprising to know that India being a country where we pay mother goddesses, every year 36,894 cases of rape are being registered, out of which every month 107 cases, and per day 4 cases of rape, including rape of child, who has even not be a teenager that happens. So that particular person who can does physical abuse to a girl, that particular person who doesn't understand what is the meaning of a child and what is the difference between a child and a teenager, who doesn't understand the meaning, I don't think society requires such person. They are really social evils. They are really catastrophic for the nation, for a society, for a world, and we don't require them, because we, the youths and the people of the nation who are in general active, they are capable enough of making their nation a developed. We don't require such people who doesn't understand who doesn't know what's the meaning of respect to a woman. We don't require such particular characters. We don't require such type of people. And the thing is that those people who gets involved in doing such crimes, actually they are addicted. They are mentally affected. And the solution to this can be none. If you go through any of the chemical processes, and you're talking about, abolishing or eradicating the desires of performing such cases in the future, still, these people will some way, okay, they will not be involved in intercourses. They will not be involved in sexual intercourse, but they can torture a girl. They will torture a girl even worse than what they did before. So this is a very dangerous step if we don't provide death penalty to that rapist. Back to you.
Okay, so the High Court of India, I looked this up before I went. The High Court of India, once there was this law that was specific to child rapists that India just passed, I believe, that said that anyone who rapes a child will be put to death. The High Court of India questions the effectiveness of that. They were like, has there been any study that shows that the death penalty actually does work as this deterrent? And there hasn't been. There was nothing that suggests that at all. There's no evidence that the death penalty actually prevents people from doing this. But there is proof from other countries that have tried this sort of thing that what it does do is it makes the victims less willing to come forward to the authorities. Because in 95% of the cases, this was another study that had been done, 95% of rape cases in India, and this is true around the world, rape is not usual. I mean, occasionally there's creepy guys who kidnap a girl off the street or jump out of the bushes, jump out of the woods. But the vast majority of the time, around 95 to 99% of the time, it's someone who they know. And that's not someone who they want put to death, usually. Occasionally they might, but usually that's not the case. So what you wind up seeing is less victims come forward and say, I was raped. So what that actually does is it means that if you instate the death penalty as the punishment for rape, what you do is you make less reporting. So more rapists stay out on the streets. Less is done about them. It's less effective. And more importantly, if rape is now punished at the same level at which rape plus murder is punished, or same rape plus torture is punished, it means that it doesn't matter. If someone's already going to rape somebody, they're incentivized to kill their victim because they don't want their victim to go to the authorities. So in order to stop that, they should logically, it's hard to say logically when we're talking about rape, but from the rapist perspective, it's better for them to kill the victim so that they don't get in trouble, they don't get the death penalty.
Okay. Whatever you say that the High Court of India or Supreme Court of India questioned the effectiveness of the particular ordinance passed by the President. So, thing is that at still present, I think there has been no countries who has passed such ordinances. And there has been no particular type of evidences, there have been no particular type of details. What will happen if we pass this law? So So until and unless we don't take a step to pass this law, we can't understand or we can't try to justify what will be the consequences afterwards. So at present, we have to take initiative to pass this law. The law must be passed. It must be made into effective. It must be performed in the state. It must perform in the nation. And after that, we'll see whether the law is really able to reduce the number of cases or not. And if not, we'll try to take an alternative option. And the question of whatever you said, not question, the statement whatever you made, that if rape plus death, murder, and only rape, they get the same punishment, then logically or illogically, it doesn't matter, that the criminal would get the criminal would have a strong tendency to kill the victim girl. But I've said it repeatedly, and I just want to say it again, that when this particular type of punishment would be implemented in a nation, and for the first time, 2 to 3 persons would be hanged in the public in a very severe condition, then probably the other persons or the ones who will try to do so would at least think 100 of times that whether it is secure for me, whether I'll be safe or not. That particular type of thinking, that particular type of thoughts would at least reduce the number of cases that we have at present. And I really agree to your point that many of the rape cases that happen at present are being done by the persons whom we know very well. And that is very true. But the point over here is that whatever you say, that many rapists are still on the streets, but the victim has not come up. At that particular point of time, the government, the society must come up to help them. It's not only just blaming the girls, it's not only just blaming the government. No, it must be their parents. It must be the girl herself that she should come up. Because it's nothing to give shame. Because someone has tortured you, you have been a victim of such a social blunder. So get the courage. Come up. Society is there. Approach the highest authorities, and you will get the justice. And so, in that case, there arises no question of the girl not coming up. So, I think even though if there are many rapists lying in the streets, then also if the girl comes up and the courage she takes to approach the government and report what has happened to her, then probably the government will take major actions, the government will take strict actions, and by providing death penalty to rapists, at a point of time, we will see that the number and efficiency of rape cases that is occurring at present will slow down to a very lowest level. And probably in the upcoming generations, this particular thing will never occur. And yes, I'll also say that parallel to this particular type of punishment, government must try to implement some type of awareness programs among the youth, not to enhance the growth of such cases. Because I do agree that death penalty is not only, I'm saying it's not only the solution, but along with that, there must be other schemes also performed by the government to abolish or eradicate this particular social evil.
Well, I mean, your resolution is that death penalty to the rapist is the only way to provide justice. So you kind of just switched your position there because you just said it's not the only way. But yeah, I would agree with you that maybe in the most extreme circumstances, and there's no way that we can keep this person in jail. Maybe they're a mob boss who is conducting mass rapes from prison, or maybe there's someone who's an escape artist who somehow manages to always get out of prison. Maybe there's someone who the chemical castration doesn't work on them. In those instances, if there's no other way for society to protect itself, perhaps the death penalty might be necessary. But until that point, it's not necessary. We can use other means to prevent them from being dangerous. We can do the most we possibly can to provide justice to the victims and to limit these violent acts that are being perpetrated on innocent people, which is the goal here. We both do want to limit those acts of rape. Then the question is just what's the most effective and what's the most humane way of doing that? And I certainly don't think that the death penalty is the only way of doing that at all. So to answer a couple of your things here, you said that we don't know how effective it will be if we institute the death penalty for rapists. Therefore, we have to try it. That doesn't seem logical to me at all. We don't know if shooting my hand is going to bring me a sense of euphoria. It might, but that doesn't mean I have to try it. We don't just go, oh, we don't know what's going to happen, so let's do it. We have to know, we have to have some level of knowledge of if it's going to work, especially if the consequences could be significant. And the fact of the matter is the consequences to this policy could be very, very problematic, which is why I'm saying we really need a lot more information on it before you can go ahead and do that, especially if it leads to the problems that I was talking about. So let me talk about some of those. You were saying that if the rape happens in public, that will deter people because they'll be like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to be hanged in public, right? That was your point, yeah. The problem with this is that's only if they believe they're going to be caught. If they believe they're going to be hanged in public, then it might work. But at the same time, if they think I can rape someone and kill them, I'll still get my fun, and then no one will know. Well, it doesn't deter them, which is exactly the problem, and that's why I bring this up. The fact that there's no evidence that this is actually going to deter people, and there are a lot of human rights organizations that are saying actually what's very likely going to happen is more victims are going to be killed after what has happened to them. So it's not actually going to help. It's actually just going to increase the violence to honestly horrifying levels. That simply isn't something that we can go into unless there's clear evidence. Like maybe some other country, maybe China tried it, and China saw a 30% decrease in rape. Okay, maybe we could talk after that. But if there's no evidence of that, then no, there's no reason to switch to that, especially when it's very likely that violence is going to increase. You then talked about how in many rape cases, I had said that in many rape cases that the victim doesn't come forward. And you said that the solution here is that society must help them, that the parents and the girl should be willing to come forward with what has happened to them, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of. And I absolutely agree with you on that. That's absolutely true. But that kind of comes back to my argument here, though. The problem is if the girl believes that coming forward is going to get her attacker killed, well, 95% of the time, she knows that attacker. She knows that person. And in the majority, even currently, even right now, when it's just when the death penalty hasn't been instated, many rape cases, even in America, go completely unreported. They're not willing to come forward because they don't want that negative stuff that's going to come to them from society, and they don't want to go through this whole court case. And if they think that their community is going to go, wow, you're trying to kill someone in our community who we all know, the likelihood of them coming forward is going to go down. They're not going to report as often as they currently do. So that's more dangerous to the women. So I agree with you that government should do something. But the solution, and we already have the solution, it's prison, it's chemical castration. It's not death penalty.
Okay. So I just, at the first, I will say one thing over it once more, that while we were providing your statements, you made us the word inhuman. You said a word inhuman, that which of them are more inhuman or which of them will be more insane or something like that. But can we consider...
I just said we should deal with this in the most humane way possible.
Okay. But do you consider the rapists to be human beings? Can we consider the rapists to be human beings?
Yes.
I don't consider them at all. They're totally a group which can be lowered down to the animals. They're really insane. They're really inhumane, and it's no longer in our society. At least not for me. They're not least human beings.
All right, let's talk about that then. Okay, so with Depo-Provera, the chemical castration drug that can limit those desires so that they will not have those desires again. They might have followed those desires and done absolutely despicable, horrible things. But with those drugs, their sexual drive is lowered, is manageable. They're normal members of society now. Would you consider them human again?
Yeah, you know what? Whatever you talk about chemical orchestration, but it is not that by providing that type of punishment and by abolishing the desire, it means giving that punishment. My point is focus on that thing that he has performed a crime before that. And afterwards, when we have abolished desires, what matters? Even though he dies after that, I don't care. But what about providing punishment to what he has done before? It is just like destroying his desires, or just we have prevented him from becoming a father. That is only what we have done to him. And other than that, we have not done anything now. So still he is a society member. Still he is a human of society because he is living. You may have thought about the gays. Gays are also a member of society. We never consider them different. So similarly in that case, but when I talk about inhuman beings, it means that they don't deserve the respect of a human being. They must be treated as the animals moving on the street side. And the point over here is that when we talk about someone being close to us has done something to us in this and that way, at a particular point of time, you see, if today someone from a family has done such a crime to the same in my family, the same in your family, but still, that particular girl who has been a victim of it must be willing, must have the courage to come and stand up. I will just define a case, very sensitive case, which occurred in my state, in Assam state where I live. Shockingly, our father raped a minor girl. Can you imagine? A father raped her own daughter. But it was in media. It came out. So do you consider those persons to be human beings? Can you consider those persons to be mentally well? No, they're affected. They're worse than the humans. And I'm speechless to define the character. That's what. Back to you.
Do you think that people can change? Do you think that people? Do you think people who have done something wrong? Do you think they can realize that? Do you think they can become better people?
No, I never think. I never think that people who have got a tendency to do something wrong can become. No, it's impossible. You take the example of any criminal. Have you ever seen any criminal who has gone to prison and afterwards he came out and just he wore some white dresses and said, no, from today I'm going to do some social work. Have you seen that? No, there exists no such cases. If it would have happened now that the criminals would realize, then at present the dons that we have, the underworld all dons that we have, they would have surrendered to the police. The Mumbai attack that we have in India, it was such a catastrophic. And after so many people killed, then also that particular bloody character doesn't understand what had happened. Still he is there. So I don't think that people, yes, I think society of people can change. The people of society can change. They can change their attitude. They can change their attitude towards the victim and can create a positive attitude of the particular victim girl to live in society freely. I can say that yes, the society can change attitude, but never the criminals.
Never criminals. So there have been trials that have been done on this in Germany and in California, in Texas, in Belgium, all over Europe, in the Nordic countries. They've tested rapists and pedophiles, and they did find that they were able to change with counseling and with administration of drugs. They were able to manage those desires. And I mean, there is a certain hardwired drive in all of us. Like, we all have our own weird, I guess, kinks and desires sexually. And those former rapists and former pedophiles, they still had some of those same desires. But what they found was that it was able to be made manageable. They were still human beings. They were still people who wanted to be good. And you would hear this from them. They would be like, I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to hurt people. It was just that I didn't know how to manage my own desires. And the fact that we've seen that, I think that shows that people can change, and that society should be willing to help these people change. Especially if we come back to just what's the most effective way of dealing with this issue of rape. And I appreciate your passion and your drive for trying to help people, especially in your native country where it's a bigger problem even than it is in mine. So I appreciate that. I really do. But I don't think that that's the most logical solution, because it does make it less likely that people will come forward, which contributes to that whole, it's a circle. If people aren't coming forward, the rapist is going to do it again. So we need to have policies that make people more willing to come forward. So if they think, I'm going to get my friend or someone who I know in this community killed, it's less likely they'll come forward. And if the rapist thinks, all right, well, I guess I have to kill now. If I can't manage this desire, so I went and raped, and now that I'm in the act, it's too late now, I guess I have to kill them. Well, that's just going to create more ineffectiveness. There's not going to be a way to stop them in the future. I think the better solution would be to recognize that we have a way of dealing with this. We can use prison. We can use chemical castration. That's more effective and it's more humane.
Yeah, but okay, answer me one question that sometimes we have seen the girl who gets raped. There are many instances when often there are various barriers for that particular girl to get married. Many of them deny to marry a girl who has got raped. So what can we do in that case? What can you do in that case?
Yeah, no, that's horrible, and that's not really something that we see in America. So that is interesting that you would bring that up. But I think that the solution there really has to be culture. That's not government that changes that as much as that's culture. That's the society, and it sounds like you recognize the fact that it's a problem. So more people like you need to recognize, hey, the girl who's been raped, that's not her fault. There's nothing wrong with it. She didn't do anything wrong there. So this means that we as a community need to come together and recognize there's nothing wrong with her. There's nothing at all. That's not a government thing. That's a society thing.
Yeah, true. That's a society thing. But when some instances happen, at a particular point of time, who is to get the blame? The girl, society, or the criminal, or the government? It in chronological order, if I count, first of all comes the criminal, second comes the society, third comes the government. It is a chronological order in which I blame this all things. So in that particular case, when the life of a girl has been destroyed, I will again say that this death penalty is only very active. And at the end, I will just conclude by saying one thing. Whatsoever may be all these things going on, doesn't matter. The first step must be taken by the society to change their mentality, to change their attitude towards the victim. And the second thing, the courage must be there in the girl to come up and fight for justice. And the third, the present youth who has got a lot of potentiality, approach the government and the government themselves, amalgamate together and work something for it. Government must be strict, they must be concerned, and the youth must create awareness program so that girls may understand their dangerous situation, girls may understand what is going to happen in that way. So I want to conclude by saying that each and every human being, not only the government, but even the society, must try to contribute something so as to prevent such cases in the future. Back to you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you said there at the end. That's absolutely true. And I think it's good to point out that there are multiple levels at which this has to be dealt with. The person who is most responsible is the criminal. Actually, the only person who's responsible is the criminal. Society and government can and should do what they can to prevent that, but the person who bears the blame is the criminal himself. Now, that doesn't mean the criminal stops being human. That's still a human being there. The criminal, we have to find a way to deal with that person in a way that society can keep itself safe, can still provide justice to the victim, and can still recognize the humanity within that person. And I think that there is a way to do that, and we've seen that with clinical trials around the world that have found solutions that are effective and that can keep the humanity of that person, even though they have done complete atrocities. We can still deal with them in an effective way. And I absolutely agree with you that society, while society is not responsible, society is responsible for the fact that they can help. And if they don't help, then they begin to take on some of that responsibility. So society needs to create a culture in which girls are able to come forward about what has happened to them, and that prevents the rapists from having these mindsets in the first place. If society is supportive of the rapist, or if the society blames the girl, that creates more of these situations. And so I understand where you're coming from with this. I'm really glad that you would come forward. I don't think that the death penalty is the only way to do this, nor is it the most effective way. But I'm very glad that you're fighting it.
Thank you very